Moving on to item 9. Consider an act on amending the development agreement between AS Gold LP and the town of Hickory, Texas. Lance, any discussion on that? Questions? There's a lot of strikeouts in this item.
Yeah, there were. I think the primary change this takes into account is that the earlier agreement we negotiated had the item related to the disannexation property. Disannex that, and this, which they, as a result, taken a portion out of here. And I just have I'm not sure who that question goes to you.
We'll take questions. I'll just make one preliminary comment. The most significant thing from AS Gold's perspective, and as I speak right now, this is the point that's being changed in the development agreement as a request of AS Gold, is the sales tax participation on the commercial property. Originally, it was contemplated that a water district would be created over almost the entirety of this property, and you would enter into an agreement with the quote water district to share your sales tax dollars. This developer is not at this point going to pursue the water district option. Instead, they're going to use an assessment that the city can establish under the Public Improvement District Act. And with that act, there's no way to share in those sales tax dollars. AS Gold, who is retaining the commercial property, has asked that the sharing go with AS Gold instead of the district. So that's probably the most significant business point that's in the document.
And I had that marked. That's the reason that we have the change from 10 gets 100% of rebates through a 3/8 agreement portion back to the goals.
So obviously, the incentive there was to incentivize the developer to do as much commercial as they can to maximize the sales tax dollars.
And Councilman Clark and I visited earlier, and Councilman had some concern about the reverter clause in the right-of-way deed being 5 years, and us being all the time completing that road for 5 years and accepting it. And there's some uncertainty about our ability to do that. So I don't know if there was any. And I visited with Ms. and she said that was kind of the final number from the other side. But that wasn't concerned with me, so I wanted to bring that up here.
Well, and I'm looking, I've received a new printout, but it doesn't have the changes in it, so I can't tell where I am in it exactly. If I can find this.
Just to give you some thoughts on that point, there's a dedication right now on the north track that envisions a new road that would be located behind the Castle House and then go over behind the north property where the residential development will go, and also behind the contemporary home. There is a certain right-of-way being reserved there for a future road, and AS Gold had, his assumption is that at some point that road would be built, but he didn't want an indefinite dedication of the right-of-way. And so the reason for the 5-year reversion is kind of gives the city 5 years to get that done. I think Councilmember Clark and Mayor Pro Tem had asked that a longer duration of time, and I'm going to kind of have to hear from her right now. The landowner's position is that 5 years is an appropriate time for that dedication. What is the Mayor Pro Tem thinking on that?
Well, the problem, I think, and I appreciate what the owner is doing here. Certainly, this is something that we've discussed, and he's trying to help us by giving a right-of-way donation. When we originally began these discussions about a year and a half ago, talking about this particular road, we had a promise of some funds from the county to help construct that road. Since that time, those funds have been rescinded and given to another town. And so we're finding ourselves in a position of, yes, we still want the road, but those funds were critical to the construction of that road. And so that's my concern, is that, and the other problem is that there is The road would tie into eventually Point Vista right here behind Walmart, and there's a gap in there. You know, the AS Gold would be donating a certain portion of that, but there's a gap that we don't have the right of way for at this point. And so my concern is that, 5 years is going to go by like that, and we don't have the funds. I'd be a lot more comfortable if I saw 10 years there. I don't know, I don't know how the rest of the council feels. I don't want to, I'm not trying to be hard-nosed about it, but I'm just trying to find something that's reasonable where we can accomplish what we all set out to accomplish when we first started this discussion.
From AS Gold's perspective and the developer that's developing right now, the developer on the residential property, the road really doesn't help a whole lot. In fact, it doesn't really assist the residential tract at all. In fact, it takes 30 feet off the back, but that's really already gone because the first phase of the north tract really extinguishes any opportunity to ever use that 30 feet anyway. The middle 60 is probably more critical as far as when you're looking at screening the castle house from anything that happens in the back. And the way that road would be aligned, may or may not be advantageous. When we were first looking at the property from the commercial multifamily perspective, when Centurion was looking at purchasing the property for that, Centurion made the determination that road wasn't that helpful to the multifamily and commercial, and that's what we've heard from a couple of people looking at the property. But we understand it's the city's perspective, they want the road, so the right-of-way is being reserved. The 5 years is in the document right now. I know you asked for 10. Perhaps a good way to handle it right now would be 7 years, and we would call it a day on that.
That would be at least more, definitely more palatable. I think I would have more hope that we might be able to work something out to get the road.
Give you 2 additional years.
Right.
I agree with, I think that's a good solution. I mean, that gives us time to work with a new county commissioner that we will have, I guess, in January. Also give us time to work with the other property owners to secure that additional right-of-way. Certainly 7 years is better than 5.
Yeah, I think it's a plus. I mean, we've seen how long it takes sometimes to gather the funds to build a road, and like Councilman Clark had stated, that commitment was taken away at the beginning of this year that was made by the commissioner. So, former commissioner, that's right. So in 7 years, I think Mr. Wilson would be advantageous. I mean, I think it would help us just in case. I mean, our focus is going to be probably Turbeville and some other roads, and then that road as that development goes forward. So yeah, if the owners are good with that, I think we're happy with 7 as well, and changing it in there. So
I think that the 7 years would be a reasonable timeline to put in there.
Okay. Any other questions, Mr. Wilson? Lance, you have some other items?
Do you have the agreement there in front of you?
I do not.
I'll give you a copy of mine here.
Yeah, I do.
Looking at the new section 7.1, 7.2, originally when you contemplated a water district here, just the district was contracted, like cities, municipal utility board, and contract with the police and fire provider. Now they've got the provision in there, the event that that's not done, the town may levy bid assessments. I guess I'm trying to think through this timeline. We don't want to be in a position where we get caught and not plan far enough ahead and suddenly we're on stuff for some amount of money before we're able to get these assessments done, or that the cost we may undergo in having these assessments done. I mean, it looks like we have the potential that we may get into the business of administering this. Am I reading that wrong?
I think from your perspective with the town, the developer is going to be coming to the town and ask for two pretty critical things. One is a public improvement district creation over the south part of the property. In the south part of the property, there'll be a capital component for qualified costs related to water, sewer, drainage, and roads. On the north side, you would see a capital component for water, sewer, drainage, and roads. But also what we envision on the north side is an assessment fundamental services for public safety in what's contemplated here. The city has all of the cards in this respect because the developer wants to get their capital component approved, and you guys would have the discretion on the capital component. So with the developer not being able to get the capital component approved through the city council, there's going to have to be that point resolved prior to his capital component occurring. So I think that's a negotiation, and the city has plenty of cards as far as that ability to maneuver.
One of the questions Lance and I spoke earlier this afternoon about was the right-of-ways and so forth within that. Is that going to be an HOA that takes care of that, or is that?
I'm sorry, say again.
Inside the development over there on the south side, is that going to be part of the HOA that takes care of that, or are you all looking for the town to take care of some of those right-of-ways?
The trail right-of-ways would be private in nature, so that would be an HOA, unless the town and the developer agreed that those needed to be, public right-of-ways, and there could be a public assessment for the maintenance for who was benefited. You could use it for that supplemental purpose. The way we envision it now is those are private, therefore the HOA would have a private fee on an annual basis to keep those maintained. And that would change, but that would be a decision the city council and the developer would make jointly.
Lance, were you just asking one question?
No, go ahead.
I noticed that on the Exhibit C plan for development, originally, in the original agreement, they requested a minimum of 10 acres commercial, maximum of 20. And I believe this, you're asking for the maximum to be that entire 37.462 acres that's left on the commercial side.
Yes, and the reason for that is it's really to the city's advantage and to AS Gulf's advantage to put as much commercial there as possible. It's pretty hard to see how that would be 37 acres of commercial property. But in the event it could be, we shouldn't hamstring or disincentivize the owner there. So I think bringing that cap up is realistic and reasonable. If you're looking at it from a market standpoint, right now I'd have to say, probably 20 acres would be good for multifamily there. But, who knows what might happen. There might be an opportunity, and if there is, we need to be able to take advantage of it.
Absolutely.
You briefly mentioned earlier about the number of apartments decreasing. Give me a broad picture of what that looks like today.
Under the current agreement, you could put 900 units under the current agreement, and the place that you put the 900 would be the north residential tract plus whatever you wanted on Swisher Road. Now that we're taking that 40 acres out of the picture, the only place left to put apartments is the Swisher Road tract, which is only 39 acres. And with the 39 acres, there's a 10-acre minimum right now for commercial. So really, there's only 29 acres left for multifamily. With the density number calculations, you're probably looking at 380 close to 400 units. Would probably be the realistic number on the commercial multifamily right now, as opposed to 900 prior, which you could have done.
I'm sorry, how many acres are left? 39 minus 10?
There's 39, and you've got 10 for commercial, so that'd be 29.
39 or 37?
It's 39 or 37, you might have, you're looking at the exhibit right now, so.
37.212.
We moved the road several times, so that
37.46.
calculation changed several times.
Okay.
We would like, that road has been moved closer to the mansion. We had it further out, but it was limiting the land so much, we moved it back and came up with a different screening plan for the castle property.
Now, I know one of the other questions I had was some wording in the earlier iteration of this, which I see you've changed, that there was originally you had said that there could be a maximum of 350 multifamily on that acreage that's left. Now I notice that it just says multifamily is restricted to the commercial tract with a maximum density of 24 dwelling units. So it still works out to about 350.
Probably, yeah. Yes. That kind of the same way I said on commercial, you probably couldn't do all 37 acres commercial, and you probably couldn't do all 37.
And the building, I'm sorry, the building standards have stayed in place for the multifamily. Nothing has changed there.
We tried to make as few changes as we could to track what the agreement was.
Any other questions, Mr. Wilson? Nancy, anything else?
No, just been the motion to include